Welcome back. With a mission to help the world stop climate change, Project Drawdown uses several methods and opportunities to engage different audiences and amplify new voices. One of their most recent efforts was a docuseries highlighting the work of climate heroes around the tri-state area. Before we meet our guests, we have a short clip about the new docuseries. Let's take a look.
My name is Christian Rodriguez.
My name is Bilal Walker.
I am Chandra Matha.
And my name is Anthony Diaz.
My name is Jennifer Seda.
My name's Amanda Appleson.
My name is Doreen Abubakar.
I'm Sochi Garcia.
I'm Alex Rodriguez.
My name is Haley Miranda.
My name is Natalie Agostofilione.
And I'm helping Reach Drawdown.
And I am helping Reach Drawdown.
And I'm helping Reach Drawdown
By giving out food and water to my community.
By advocating and empowering for youth that can't.
By linking together community champions and government officials.
Empowering our community to speak up for ourselves.
By turning refuse into resource.
Through urban farming and asthma awareness education.
By facilitating different volunteer events.
By making plant-based food easier to access.
By organizing for environmental justice.
By empowering BIPOC and immigrant people to be unique environmental change agents.
Using placemaking for urban environmental connections.
The Director of Storytelling and Engagement for Project Drawdown, Matt Scott, joins me to discuss this effort. Matt, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Kibin.
Of course.
I'm so honored to talk with the audience here today.
Yeah, so I'm so excited to learn a little bit more about the organization. Can you just first tell us, what is Project Drawdown and how did it begin?
Yeah, so Project Drawdown is a global nonprofit climate solutions resource and actually was founded in 2014 as a book project. In 2017, the Drawdown book, which you could find here, was released and became a New York Times bestseller, identifying nearly 100 climate solutions in the world today. But today, how Project Drawdown is different than that book project in 2017 is that while folks still continue to be informed by the book and to learn from it, we're really focused on equipping communities with what they need to stop climate change in the spirit of our mission as quickly, safely, and equitably as possible. And so we do that through a few different ways, in part by focusing on climate solutions and continuing to update those, by supporting leaders who are doing that work, but also through the work that I do and lead, which is focused on promoting new voices and new narratives.
Now, what I thought was so interesting was the equitably part. So how does the organization achieve this mission of helping the world stop climate change equitably, and what does that mean?
Yeah, so I think, when it comes to equity overall, that's a constant process and constant journey that this climate world is on. I'll say for myself that one of the reasons I got engaged in the climate world and joined Project Drawdown 3 years ago, launching our Stories program, was seeing just the lack of diversity, the lack of a focus on justice and equity within climate conversations. So the climate world is still learning and growing in that sense. One of the ways that Project Drawdown centers equity, though, is through our Drawdown Stories program, which we'll talk a lot about today, but we're really focused on centering those conversations on equity, on justice, and really allowing underrepresented voices to guide the conversation and guide the stories that we tell around climate change and climate solutions.
Now, Project Drawdown aims to promote new climate narratives and new voices, which you have mentioned, and I think that's a huge part of, the organization's mission. How does the organization do this?
Yeah, so I joined the organization 3 years ago, starting the Drawdown Stories program. And what I always share with folks is that initially the idea was just that the organization would share stories in some kind of amorphous way around climate change and solutions. And I myself, as a young person, a Black person, a queer person, decided we need to focus these stories on communities that aren't at the table, that aren't represented. Because one of the things that's so important for viewers to understand when it comes to climate is that the communities that are most vulnerable to the impacts of the climate crisis, that are first and worst impacted by the climate crisis, including Black communities, Indigenous communities, communities of color, low-income communities, are also so often the least represented in climate dialogue, in climate conversation. We see this with so many issues, but this is also true in the climate space, and it's really damning when we look at the realities that so many underrepresented communities or environmental justice communities face today. And not being at the table means that you're not having your needs met. It means that you're not being integrated into the conversation, and it only perpetuates the problems. And so through the work that we do at Drawdown Stories, it's really focused on bringing in voices, and in the process building power in those voices, in those community members, in those climate heroes, while also shaping culture, helping people see the diversity of folks that are at the table, that do have the power to contribute to solutions, and of course, changing behavior, which is ultimately what we need to do individually and systemically to stop climate change.
Now, I kind of want to expand on that a little bit more because I think it's a very important point, and it's part of the driving force behind the docuseries, which we're going to get into a little bit. But can you just talk about the history of being underrepresented in these conversations, and what does that look like? Because when I think of it, I think of like, you know, how people often think it's expensive to go green, and maybe some communities can't afford to do that. Is that what we're seeing, or is it playing out in a different way?
Yeah, it's really interesting that you bring that up. And it's one thing I think that's really important and fascinating when it comes to the climate conversation is that there are so many misconceptions about what it takes to be green, what it takes to be an environmentalist, what it takes to show up and, one, have a sustainable lifestyle yourself, but then to contribute to sustainable lifestyles. And the thing that I focus on, less than the individual action piece, like, oh, buying an electric vehicle or fully embracing a vegan or plant-based lifestyle, which are all really important things and tied to climate solutions, is that I really focus on helping folks see that they could play a role. So just taking a step back when it comes to the history of underrepresentation, I mean, from a personal perspective, I'll say I grew up around a dinner table where my mom, who was a teacher, a professor, who would talk about social inequality, talk about social justice, would bring home these conversations to our dinner table about the realities of our worlds, where Black and Brown communities are often receiving the brunt of inequality. And so when it comes to climate change, we talk about inequality, but I think it's also really important to see patterns of inequality across the spectrum, not just when it comes to climate change and otherwise. And so Robert Bullard, who's the father of environmental justice, is a good person to look to for a lot of great learning and understanding when it comes to the problem overall. But, we again, like I said, we've seen that so often Black and Brown communities aren't integrated in the decision making, aren't represented among leadership, aren't receiving investment to move their solutions forward. And that's part of the problem, because that results in Black and Brown communities being the worst impacted. And so we've seen these problems for the longest while in our history, but through storytelling and narrative, hopefully we could help people become aware of them and change the narrative and change how we operate when it comes to climate change, and who's able to be at the table and able to be part of solutions.
Now, in an effort to kind of change the narrative, I want to talk about the docuseries. Can you tell us a little bit more about that project, and what was your role in assisting the creation of the documentary?
Yeah, so Drawdown's Neighborhood is a climate change short documentary series passing the mic to voices that often go unheard. And I am the creator of the series, the producer of the series, and the host of the series, which I'm so proud of, because we still need more and more stories that bring in and center underrepresented voices. And so Drawdown's Neighborhood overall, beyond just being a docuseries, is a storytelling and engagement initiative where, yes, we present these episodes of the series, and I'm so proud to share that we've put out 48 episodes to date from a number of cities, including Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Atlanta, Georgia, the Twin Cities, New Orleans, and most recently, Newark, New Jersey, New Haven, Connecticut, and the Bronx as part of this tri-state series. And with Drawdown's Neighborhood, we focus on, again, not just putting out these stories, but providing engagement resources to help folks discover solutions and take action in their own way. Because, as I found myself, this world of climate change and climate solutions, especially when you approach it just with the statistics, just with the data, just the science, can be really overwhelming and not accessible to everyone or relatable to everyone. And these stories are really focused on making climate change and climate solutions accessible, relatable, understandable, and I think most importantly, human.
Right. Well, I want to take a moment to highlight one of our climate heroes from the Bronx, which I think is super exciting. It's Jennifer Seda from the Bronx River Alliance. Can you tell us a little bit more about her work and the effort, she and her organization does to address climate change in the Bronx?
Yeah, so Jennifer, who is a phenomenal change maker, one of the climate heroes that we featured in the Bronx. Jennifer is the volunteer program assistant at the Bronx River Alliance, which works to preserve and restore the Bronx River and integrate climate solutions into the Bronx River environment and how we interact with it in the Bronx. And there are a few things that I really just admire and appreciate about Jennifer in her story. One of them, which you'll see if you check out her episode at drawdown.org/neighborhood, of course, is that Jennifer entered this work not as an environmentalist or someone who cared the most about climate change. Like, she did care about climate, was exposed to that as someone who grew up in the Bronx, but also has family in Puerto Rico, which is very much involved with nature and getting engaged. She joined the field of climate out of necessity. As a vegan who lost her job at a restaurant due to the pandemic, Jennifer found that getting involved with community gardens and planting her food and embracing plant-rich diets was one of the ways that she not only supported her lifestyle, but also could support her community. And the other thing I really appreciate about Jennifer is that she never studied environmental science or any topic related to climate change. So often people think they need to be scientists, they need to be experts, they need to be environmentalists in the traditional way, when something that I'm so proud that we featured in Drawdown's Neighborhood through Jennifer's story and beyond is that there's so many people who contribute to solutions who aren't even, environmentalists or don't think about climate change on a day-to-day basis. That's what matters, that we welcome a range of people to show up and belong. And then the final thing I love about Jennifer's story is just how she's really focused on sharing her story and changing the narrative, which is so important when we look at, looking at this tri-state series, for example. Looking at Newark, New Jersey, which is often a site of so much dumping from the state of New Jersey and the surrounding area. I grew up in New Jersey near Newark and knew that reality and knew that experience. And it's important that we change the narrative there. With New Haven, Connecticut, so often it's associated with Yale University, but New Haven is so much more than an Ivy League university. And I'm proud that we could share the stories of the people there. And with the Bronx, I mean, there are a number of narratives that are discussed within the Drawdown's Neighborhood episodes with Jennifer, but also Haley Miranda and Amanda Appleson, where, we really need to go beyond the identity of folks in these communities, including the Bronx, just being victims or villains. Like, we can be heroes. And that's one thing that Jennifer really hits home.
And I love that you said that, we as in everybody. And, I just think it's so amazing, so much of what you talked about. So I truly appreciate you taking the time. It was wonderful to meet you. And thank you so much for joining us and having this conversation.
Thank you so much, Kibin.
If you want to learn more about Project Drawdown's docuseries, please go to their website at www.drawdown.org/neighborhood or follow them on social media at Project Drawdown. Stay tuned. We have more open for you right after this.